together. I think there's nothing more festive than a glass full of bubbles. It's not really a party until someone hands you a glass with some bubbles in it. You know, one of my favorite sayings is, you know, most everyone likes champagne, and champagne likes most everything. It's one of those style of wines, champagne and sparkling wine, that works really, really well with food and with a wide gamut of food. There is sparkling wine out there that works well with, you know, nice, really sort of ethereal courses. If you're doing, you know, really like canapes, champagne can also work with a blend roast steak. So it really kind of, it's one of those wines that you can start the meal drinking all the way through, soup to nuts, all the way through dessert. You know, I love champagne. It's something like a great morning, noon, and night. The only thing I don't like about champagne is the price, as it starts to get very expensive very, very quickly. But if you get a little adventurous and you're beyond the borders of Champagne in France, there's this whole host of sparkling wines that you can afford to drink every single day, you know, without feeling guilty about it. So I thought we'd finish up with something local, considering we're dealing with Thanksgiving, and supposedly Thanksgiving has to do with Massachusetts. So this is a wonderful sparkling wine made locally called Westport Rivers that I'm sure some of you are familiar with. Small little family-run winery that's located in Westport, Massachusetts, right down there on Buzzards Bay as you're heading down to the Cape. It's owned and operated by the Russell family, and it really is a family affair. The parents Russell set up the winery, but their son Bill is the winemaker, and their other son Rob is the vineyard manager. So the two brothers are there working on it and making up this beautiful sparkling. The Russell family started up this property, they started planting in about the mid part of the 1980s or so. The Russell parents had got to retirement age, they ended up selling their metallurgy business, and it was a matter of, well, what are we going to do now? Mrs. Russell, her grandfather, was a winemaker on Long Island. And she had very fond memories of going and sitting, hanging out with him, running around the vineyards, and they thought, well, why don't we do this in our retirement? Wouldn't that be fun? Kind of get back to the family roots and, you know, and do a winery. And so they started hunting all over the place to try to find land where they could plant vines or buy an existing winery. They went down to Long Island. They went out to Pacific Northwest. They looked up in Washington, Oregon. They went out to California. I think they even went down into New Mexico to take a look, and as far flung as heading over to New Zealand. And in the process of them running around and looking for places, they ended up running across this dilapidated dairy farm down in Westport. And they just absolutely fell in love with the area, you know, being so close to Horseneck Beach, you know, just a wonderful space. And they ended up buying. And they thought, well, why don't we see if we can do our vineyard here? So they ended up calling their friends on Long Island, come down and take a look at the property and do their studies. And lo and behold, it comes back like, yeah, this is actually a really good place to grow grapes, especially if you want to focus on sparkling wine. And that's what they went ahead and did. They started planting this old dilapidated dairy farm in the mid part of the 80s. Their first cases of sparkling wine came up for sale in 1991, and L'Espalier, our sister restaurant, was their first customer. It was the first sale that they made. So, and ever since, you know, Frank bought it in 1991, we've always had Westport available by the glass over at L'Espalier, and as we continue to open up Subtler we have it available here as well. So I've been pouring this as long as I can possibly remember. It's really one of my favorite things to have. Typically, I drink a lot of Westport out of a coffee cup hiding in a stairwell, which is where I think it tastes best. But part of the reason why this is so good is this is done the exact same way it's done in champagne. Same method for getting the bubbles in and dealing with the same grape variety. This is the RGR sparkling, which they're most famous for doing. It's the most prevalent sparkling that they do. The blend out that changes a little bit sort of year to year. This 05 blend, Bill decided to do a little experiment and he went really heavy on Pinot Noir. This is about 70% Pinot Noir and about 30% Chardonnay. So this is definitely a much richer, much gutsier style of RGR than we've done in the past, because it's predominantly made from red grape. So nice good amount of earthy tones to it, a really elegant tight bubble to it, and that little dose of Chardonnay kind of gives it a little bit of lift. Part of the reason why I like the Westport so much is they end up holding it back. This is 05. So this has been sitting and aging for 5 years now. That gives it a little bit more richness and a little bit more complexity to it. And I think it just works out wonderfully. And we've got this wonderful property, you know, just down the road from us, and it just ties in so well with what we do at the restaurant. You know, L'Espalier has always been about local ingredients long before that was the cool sort of happening thing to do. You know, we always had herb farms, just up there on the roof deck over at Les Milliers. Right now in the company, we actually have our own farm up in Essex. Frank is farming like about 15, 20 acres right now. That he brings in produce from the farm every single day up in Essex. Even before we had the farm, we had people that were growing animals for us, like lambs. We had someone that were making lambs for us that they bring down. Local cheese, local herbs, just local produce. The bounty that we've got this wonderful winery just down the road, so it's this natural sort of pairing. So we've been very closely involved with what Westport has been doing. We're definitely very supportive of local industry, and I just think their stuff is great. One of the advantages of being the wine director at Les Milliers is I end up getting to meet a lot of people, and I end up meeting a fair amount of champagne producers that end up coming over from France. Invariably like to come over, take a trip through Boston. Obviously most of them are going down to New York in that big market and hitting Boston on their way out. They almost always stop by and see us. And I've got this sort of standard routine as any sort of champagne producer that comes in, like, we'll taste the wine, I'll tell them, wait, I'll be right back. And I grab a bottle of Westport and I throw it in a brown paper bag and I pour it for them and go, here, I've got something for you. And 99.9% of the time I meet with these champagne producers and their answer is, wow, I know what this is. There's this small little thing just down the road from me. Over in Champagne, there's this small little house, my friend Pierre, my friend Jacques, or whatever, like, oh, where did you get it? And I show them it was made here in Massachusetts, and they are absolutely blown away. Because to them, it tastes like champagne. It behaves like champagne, smells like champagne, tastes like champagne, and invariably, any person that I meet with always wants to take a couple bottles back with them, which we go ahead and give it to them. So if you're ever over in France and you're in a champagne house, and you see some bottles of Westport there that they've got sitting on the shelf, they came from us. So thank you very much for coming. We've got different wine and different food for you every night. So have a great evening. So happy Thanksgiving. You're welcome.